All right, let's get started. First off, again, let me introduce myself. My name is Jeff Peirantozzi. I'm the practice lead for data analytics here at InOutsource. And welcome everybody to today's webinar. We appreciate you taking the time to talk a little bit about lateral analytics and the whole process of incoming and outgoing staff, building your firm, acquiring new capabilities. We're going to talk about a number of different things. But wanted to do a little bit of introduction of InOutsource. Many of you on the call today or on the webinar today have worked with us in the past or maybe heard of us. And if you have worked with us in the past, thank you for your business and thank you for spending some time with us today. If you haven't heard from us, we like to say that we implement insight. And what does that mean? So we do a number of different things. We focus on information governance, but generally speaking, for law firms, we help you harness your processes, harness your data, and improve operations and improve many of the processes that you have within your organization. We focus on three primary areas: risk management, information governance, and analytics. And you can see here at the bottom there, we have a number of different partnerships that we bring both our experience with those products as well as our experience with law firms in general and the processes specifically around laterals and all the information that comes and goes with those processes to bear with those partners that you see at the bottom of the screen. So some of the things that we do from a risk management perspective, policies and procedures, something we've been talking a lot about with firms recently, audit response, and responding to those audit letters and the process that goes into that. Information governance, law firms, every firm, the entire world runs on information. The acquisition of it, the use of it, and making it available to make data-driven and informed decisions. And we do a lot of IG consulting and workflow design, data integration, one of my favorite pieces. Data is everywhere, and part of our webinar series, we find that to be true and continuing to be true. And we'll talk a little bit about today about how we can pull some of that data together from where it lives and put it in a place and in a format that gives you the ability to make some both strategic and tactical decisions around today's topic, lateral workflow. And then the last piece there, analytics that you see on the right-hand side, focused on business intelligence, taking the data that you have, making it work for your organization. So the information that you generate, that you purchase, that you have on clients, that you have on jurisdictions, matters, experience, all of those things. How do we better use that data? How do we get better access to it? How do we make sure that it's usable? How do we make sure that we're making data-driven decisions that are based on solid, concrete, verified data? So I'll focus mainly on the analytics piece today, and hopefully we'll share some things about what we've been hearing, conversations that we've been having, and some of the things that we've been working on with clients for solving one small part of the overall challenges inherent in the lateral process. Some administrative stuff, some participation tips. You're in listen only mode, so you can listen to my melodious voice coming out of your headset or your speakers. We'll give you mute button controls so you can mute and unmute yourself. We are going to set aside some time to do questions throughout the course of, probably at the end actually, of the webinar today. And some information there. We can give you control. Have some folks from my team here at InOutsource on the line. Kel Jackson is our moderator on the back end. So he's keeping me on the straight and narrow, making sure that all of our controls are working. So what to expect, if you have questions, feel free to add those to the chat windows. We are going to have a couple of questions from a polling perspective to put out there throughout the course of our webinar today. I can't see you. You could see me, and you could see my favorite painting on the wall behind me. Starry Night's always been a favorite of mine. So a little bit more about InOutsource. Again, if you've worked with us in the past, this might be not new information to you, but we're focused on the legal market. Law firms, corporate legal departments is what we do, primarily law firms. We're woman-owned. We have lawyers on staff. I am a certified records manager. We have others on staff as well. We have project management professionals. We have other vendor-specific certifications. Lots of expertise in the legal industry. And we take the complete context approach to the work that we do. So we do point projects that solve a specific problem, but we're always looking at it, how does this impact the overall business or the overall business process that is that we're attempting to solve one part of the problem for. Some of the folks that we've done business with, some of you are on the phone, but just some examples of the work that we've done in previous iterations. And these go across all of our service offerings, done a lot of work on a number of different layers, a number of different areas for all of those organizations. And we do like what our clients say about us. More often than not, we are pinning projects and making positive impacts on our clients. So just a couple of things about our background and our track record in the industry. So what are we talking about today? We're talking about analytics. That's why you signed into the webinar. Heard this really cool title about data everywhere. Hey, I've got problems managing the lateral process, whether that's identifying candidates or matching up our strategy for where our firm wants to go and getting people through the process of evaluation and bringing them on board. Or it's, hey, you know, once they come on board, we got to get them hitting the ground running. Talk about all those things and where analytics play in a role in managing all of that and using it as a strategic and tactical advantage. So some of the things we do, we're right sizing. So as you saw earlier, we're partnered with a couple of different tools, but we are solving issues, solving problems, solving challenges with analytics solutions, regardless of the platform. A lot of platforms out there, I'm sure everyone has some type of analytics tool, even if it's Microsoft Excel or whatever it happens to be, that are a part of your tool set in terms of solving problems, managing data, taking the information that you need to make some decisions and getting it in a way that you, others, your team, the firm can use in a positive way to make, again, data-driven decisions. And I couldn't go any further without mentioning Intapp. So one of the solutions that you're gonna see today pulls in some data from an Intapp solution. So we are an Intapp partner, but doing numerous implementations of various Intapp projects. We have members of our team who are the experts beyond my understanding of Intapp on the phone today, if there are any questions that come up on that side. But again, been doing Intapp for a long time, doing a lot of work with their latest solutions as part of our overall suite of services here at InOutsource. So let's get into the meat of what is lateral analytics. Sounds cool. What does it mean? So we look at the process of incoming staff, outgoing staff as all part of lateral analytics. So the graphic that you're looking at here encompasses all of the things that we think about and the conversations that we've been having with firms about. How are all of these things impacted? How do they flow together? How do we manage this whole process from the beginning on the left that you see over there, from business development strategy and firm direction? What does that look like? Are we trying to expand into a new geography? Are we trying to expand into a new area of law? Or is there another firm or set of folks that have complementary skills to what your firm does or what a group within your firm does? How do we move the ball forward in terms of growing the business, in terms of acquiring new capabilities or new experience? And what does that firm direction look like? So how do we set that strategy? How do we support that strategy over time? That, hey, we set the strategy, this is where we want to be in 6 months, 9 months, 18 months, 2 years. How do we get from today to there throughout the rest of the circles that you see on the screen? And again, firm direction could be, hey, we want more business. Everybody wants to make more revenue. It could be, hey, you know, we have certain diversity goals that we have set as an organization that we want to be able to meet. So how do we incorporate those goals in addition to, hey, we need to grow and expand and make more money into the whole overall process of growing the business and the lateral process of incoming and outgoing staff. So how do you translate that strategy as to where you want to be, revenue, skill sets, areas of law, diversity, into your recruiting and evaluation efforts? So what are the things that you can do from an analytics perspective when you move into that next circle? And some of the conversations that we've been having are, how do we keep a track of who we're recruiting, where we're recruiting them, what they are proposing to bring with them, and incorporate that into an overall solution so that we can monitor the process as it goes throughout the year or across the course of our 3 or 5 year or 2 year plan. And in addition to that, are there trends that we can identify as part of recruiting and evaluation based on being able to view and visualize the data in a way that allows us to take a look at, for this particular geography in this area of law, generally speaking, we as a firm do a very good job when we bring on people in Miami for this type of law. Or generally speaking, in South Florida, we do a great job whenever we bring on, regardless of area of law. But what does that look like for all of your recruiting processes and the evaluation process of incoming attorneys or incoming partners in terms of, hey, when we recruited this particular person, it took them 2 years or 3 years, 5 years to fully integrate with the firm. So what does that look like? How do those trends impact your recruiting? And how do you manage and adjust your recruiting processes based on that? Then one of the pieces that maybe some on the phone today are primarily interested is the onboarding and the offboarding process. So onboarding, how do we get the attorneys, bring in some work with them, bring in some staff with them? How do we get them up and running as quickly as possible? How do we put some analytics around that? How do we gain visibility into that process so that we can monitor it and identify bottlenecks, make that process do the continuous improvement that we try to do to make processes go as smooth as possible and really facilitate someone getting up to speed and getting right into client and matter work. Then the offboarding process, it's just as incoming laterals are a part of the business, so are outgoing laterals. And how do we gain visibility into that process? And we're not going to talk too much about that process today, but some of the partnerships that we have, FileTrail, Intapp, others, have some other analytics solutions beyond what we're going to show today that address some of those. How do we gather all that material? How do we do the review when someone is departing the firm and taking a chunk of work with them? And then one of the pieces that we will talk about today is the monitoring impact. So you've gone through this whole process. You set a direction for your firm. You've got recruiting active for the types of work that you want to do, complementary service offerings, areas of law, geographies, whatever that happens to be. How do you then go back and make sure that the results of the recruiting, someone comes on board, brings some new business with them? How do you evaluate what was talked about in terms of projected revenue, in terms of actuals, and what is the timeline for that to occur? Does it occur? Does the rainmaker who you brought on board bring that $10 million of client work with them? And how long does it take to get there? And what were the roadblocks in the way? Was it conflicts that had to be addressed, or other components of the process that impact what that final impact and whether or not those clients were brought on board and that revenue was realized, that was talked about during the recruiting process? So some of the pieces, how do you track the revenue, hours billed, clients matters, et cetera? I'm sure everyone on the phone has accounting systems and plenty of analytic solutions in place for managing hours billed and fees received and all of those financial pieces. But are there other solutions that can marry up the projections versus the actuals from your recruiting process, where that data might be stored in an HR system or another system, and marrying that up to the accounting data for actual clients and matters that were brought on board. And then speaking of human resources systems and that type of data, how do you then, from a tracking and monitoring perspective, how do you also take into account maybe other goals that you have from your firm direction or your strategy for bringing on new partners or new associates or new staff in general from a diversity perspective? Hey, we have these goals. Yes, the person that came on board said they're going to bring this amount of work with them. They did, or they didn't, or it took this long, but also those other goals. Do we now, as our partner base, now become more diverse? And how do we track those goals in addition to obviously the revenue component of that? And then all the other pieces that go into that professional involvement, pro bono work, maybe mentoring of staff, other things in terms of the overall impact that that lateral hire has had on the organization. So that's a lot. And we've been having conversations about each of these circles and some of these boxes with a number of different firms. So we're going to show you some of the results of those conversations. But again, I'm not going to tell you we have a solution for every one of these things. Generally speaking, the way that we handle analytics at InOutsource is the tools are a platform, and understanding the business and how that data flows within your organization and how to harness that within these tools and make it available in a way that end users can quickly visualize it, quickly work with that data, is the magic, where you take a tool and you integrate the data that you need, and in this case, make it easier to manage the overall lateral process throughout your firm and all these boxes that you see on screen. So today's focus really is the recruiting and evaluation piece, and we'll talk about tracking, visualizing, and recruiting efforts, and then really monitoring the impact. So we're going to show you an application today that we've built, working with a number of clients. It continues to evolve, so some of the things you're going to see are some iterations, and we're always working on something at DNA Labs here at InOutsource. But let's see what we have so far and talk about some of the things that you can do with these analytics tools. So what you see here is the overview of your recruiting efforts for incoming laterals. So some of the things that you see on the screen here: how many candidates are we currently interviewing or are currently in the pipeline in terms of our recruiting efforts? You see across the top here, here are some very high level indicators of what the status of your lateral recruiting process is within your organization. So we have 21 folks that we're taking a look at, and they have entered into our process for recruiting in some way. How many different positions are there associated with those candidates? So are we looking at partners? Are we looking at associates? Are we looking at a combination thereof? And where are we in terms of practice groups? So we're looking for folks across 5 different practice groups here within the firm. And at the moment, based on where all the folks are that are in the pipeline, the projected revenue that those individuals would be bringing with them, either individuals or as groups, would be bringing with them to the firm. And you can visualize some of this information from a location perspective. So if you are attempting to do some analysis or focus on a particular area or a particular region, or you're trying to build out a particular office, say we just opened an office in Philadelphia and now we're looking to expand that office's footprint or the types of law that they do. The map that you see here can focus in on a specific location, and then you can drill into that information. So let's take a look at Miami, because they don't have as much snow there as we do here in the Philadelphia area. And you can then focus in on, okay, we've got 3 candidates that we're looking at in the Miami office. And what does that look like for those candidates in the Miami office from a projected revenue perspective? All right, so we have this goal that we want to build a Miami office by $5 million in the next 18 months. How far along that road will we get with the current folks that we have in the pipeline? So it looks like we would have about $2 million for intellectual property and another $315K for banking in terms of the projected revenue and clients and matters that those candidates would bring across. So again, this overview sheet sort of gives you a snapshot in time of where things are in your recruiting processes for your incoming laterals. Again, this could be used, the conversations we've had is that this will be used as, hey, I just want to see at a high level, what is our current status of those goals that we set for this year, this last 18 months, 2 years, in terms of bringing in additional staff within the organization. From there, you can get into some more detail. And conversations that we've been having with firms is, hey, we live in an interesting world. 2020 was an interesting year. Some firms did better than they expected. Some firms didn't do quite as good as they expected. It was an extraordinary situation for all of us. But if you don't have all the money in the world to bring folks onto the firm, and you need to make some data-driven decisions around who would be the best in terms of our goals, who meets the profile for what we're trying to achieve from our firm's expansion the best based on a number of different factors. And wherever this data lives, you can bring it into these analytics tools. So we have a number of different things that we mashed up here on the screen. You can see that the top left here, sort of the top part of the screen is really focused on the revenue impact that individuals would be bringing to the firm. So this top left, you can see that compares the number of clients versus the projected revenue. And you can see that, Amira Jones sort of comes out in the top right quadrant of the graphic. And from a evaluation perspective, if it is based, part of the evaluation process is how much revenue is that person going to bring into the firm and how many clients they're going to bring into the firm. This type of mashup of that information would give you the ability to do some analysis. If you were looking at, hey, we can hire one person this year, who would that be? Would Amira be the best bet, or would C. Jones be the best bet? And if you're basing it just upon revenue, maybe Amira is the right person because she is projecting to bring the most revenue into the firm. But then you can drill down and do some analysis beyond that. So let's take a look at a particular office. We're doing Miami, let's go, and we'll do Chicago. Chicago is a bad choice because only Daisy is under evaluation in Chicago. Let's go across geographies. So we have Chicago and Boston. We can hire one person for Chicago and Boston. So let's take a look at the individuals that we have identified on those 2 offices from a hiring office perspective. So we got some folks over on that are bringing no clients and very little revenue. So in this particular comparison, they might not shine, like bubble to the top in terms of the evaluation process. Let's go back to everybody again, show some more data. So number of clients, revenue, this gives you the ability to compare across candidates in a simple interface. So again, those trade-off decisions that need to be made in terms of who are we going to hire, who can we afford to bring on board, and how does it tie into the goals that we've set for building the firm. If you wanted to come at it from a different perspective, again, mashing up all this data, and we really want to make a focus on bringing in intellectual property work this year. You can focus on that particular data. So who of the incoming candidates would be bringing intellectual property work with them? So you can see that Alexa Jones and my favorite Michael Knight and his talking car would be bringing along to the firm. And then if there are specific client targets that you have, hey, we really want to do work with Bank of America, and we want to do intellectual property work for Apple. You can see surface some of that data here on the bottom right. So again, analytic solutions for taking both a strategic and tactical review of the lateral process and the incoming folks that you are evaluating as part of the lateral process. So again, informing, giving visibility into and decision-making process for your recruiting processes, as well as the ability to compare to your plan and compare to your overall vision for building and growth of the firm. So then some of the other demographics. So if there's a particular candidate that you want to take a closer look at, hey, it's down to these two folks, maybe Amira and Damon. So let's take a closer look at Damon and some of the other information that we have about Damon that has been gathered throughout the evaluation process. So, and some of this could be informative, and some of them might be more informative at an associate level rather than a partner level. But if we're bringing Damon on at the partner level, we can see that he is an alum of Temple University, and maybe there are things about alums from Temple University from a partner perspective or a fit to the firm perspective that make them more successful within your firm. Or what does that information look like? Again, taking this various points of data, putting them into a place where you can analyze them and see if there are trends that will affect your recruiting process, or in this case, using them as decision points for, hey, we want to go and make one hire. Should it be X or should it be Y? So we can see that Damon is also projecting to bring Bob Soap and Johnson & Johnson and Smith Incorporated to the firm, along with other clients and matters. And now you have more information about Damon and can drill into the information that you have gathered about him, and whether that's where he is admitted to the bar, what his veteran status is. Again, this could be any demographic information that you wanted to evaluate, compare across candidates, etc. He is a veteran. There might be others that are disabled veterans. How does that factor into the decision-making process? And again, we're talking about partners. Lots of times it's about the revenue. So again, seeing the revenue over there, excuse me, on the right-hand side of the screen there. And again, you can, some of the solutions that we've built focus on, hey, here's what the reasonable number is, here's the pessimistic number, and hey, if everything goes right and 2021 is a great year, this is what the optimistic projections would be for revenue that that person would be bringing with them. So again, we're drilling into successive layers of detail, peeling back the onion for the information that we have on these candidates to make it a data-driven decision for who might be coming on board to the firm and who might be the right hire to both meet the firm's goals, as well as traditionally or historically speaking, types of folks, background of folks that are successful in your particular firm and your particular firm's culture. Then one of the other pieces is, how do we get visibility into the process? So Damon looks great. Let's get him hired. This particular screen, again, it's a little bit raw, but gives you visibility into where are all of these candidates in the process. So, hey, this looks really great. Damon says he's going to bring $5 million to the firm. We could use that by the end of next month to meet whatever goal. Where does he stand in the process of hiring him into the firm and getting him onboarded? So this is really focused on the recruiting process. You can see that Damon here has the longest bar, so he is furthest along in the process. And then, so both giving the view here at the top of where do all these candidates stand in the evaluation process, and Do we need to speed things up? Do we need to focus on this particular person? Hey, this person's been sitting in this particular status for a while. Do we need to reach back out to that person, or do we need to figure out what the bottleneck might be on our side? And some of those things can be surfaced, right? So whatever system, however you are tracking that information in terms of, hey, we made a call, or somebody filled out a form, or hey, we have a questionnaire out to this particular person, you can focus on some of that information here as to how long has that person been in that particular step. And this can be some more operational for your recruiting process. Maybe there's some bottlenecks in the process, or hey, we got hung up on this particular step with this candidate. Why is that happening? Gives you some visibility into the actual process, your recruiting process, to see if there are changes that can be made, or something needs somebody's attention to move through. And then you can drill into, hey, what office? Let's take a look at the folks coming in for office. Michael Knight looks like he's pretty far along in the process. Paul and Sal are also fairly long in the process, but what about the rest of these folks? So again, taking all of this data, giving you both a high level view of it from an analytical perspective to be able to see how things are matching up with your strategy, then being able to drill down into those details to really get into, hey, do we need to make a decision? Hey, what is the process? We made a decision on this person. When are they going to be ready to come into the firm? And then made this hiring decision, went through this whole process, all of the conversations, all of the meals and the Zoom chats, and all of the various pieces of the recruiting process. How do we track the impact that that person is having on the firm? And particularly from a revenue perspective and a client perspective, Damon said he was going to bring these great clients that we really wanted to be a part of. When did that happen? Did it happen? So tracking that information and bringing it from here's what we projected to here's what the actuals are. I'm sure everybody has some type of budget or some type of actual versus projected that they measure or have seen, and this gives you the ability to do that. So how do you tie in your recruiting process and your onboarding process and the information that was gathered then to what things look like 6, 9, 18, 24 months down the road? And this is information or a way to surface that information that gives you the ability to do that. And again, this can be tactical. Hey, what does Damon look like? So we can focus on Damon. Damon brought one of his 4 clients that he projected to bring across. And what does that revenue look like? So he projected to bring $3.25 million. He actually brought $34 million with the clients that he brought on board. So you can do that both at a tactical level, but then also at a strategic level. Hey, all the folks that we brought on board, what is the total impact of our lateral program and our recruiting process for those folks? We brought on 8 or 10 attorneys, and we brought 9 out of 16 clients. So what does that look like in terms of our 2, 3, 5-year plan? And do we need to feed that back into our process and say, hey, we need to really focus on this? Or, hey, you know what? A couple of these folks, Z and Paul and Sarah, brought less than they were projecting. Or is that focused on a particular geography or a particular area of law? Are there extenuating circumstances for that? If so, what are they? And how do we feed those back into our overall strategy as well as our recruiting practices to maybe reduce the variance between what was projected and what is actual when it comes to bringing on new individuals and new areas of business into the firm. All right, so just to summarize what we just went over, analytics tools analytics solutions gives you the ability to obviously understand parts of your business processes. In this particular case, how do we marry up, gain visibility into our firm growth strategy from a lateral perspective? How do we focus on where we stand with those things and gain insight into what is working and what is not working in terms of our recruiting and onboarding processes? And then that piece, after you've brought some folks on into the firm, how do you get down to that place where you can identify, hey, when we're bringing these folks on, are we doing a good job as a firm? Do we generally have success with the folks that we're bringing on board? And if not, what are the factors that are going into the challenges and the unsuccessful things that we are doing as a firm? And how do we minimize those? How do we maximize those things that are working for the firm in terms of our lateral approach to laterals, in terms of recruiting and those, and building the firm? All right, I'm gonna flip back to some slides now. So we talked about that, recruiting and evaluation and monitoring impact, and showed a little bit about some of the things that we've done with clients and to respond to some of the questions that they've asked about gaining visibility into these processes and really bringing a level of rigor to the evaluation process and how to gain better handle and control over transitioning or translating a strategy for firm growth into so the tactical and day-to-day operational running of recruiting processes and onboarding and evaluation processes for attorneys. So that slide's out of place because I already gave the demo. So some of the things that we talked about, and just to revisit some of those pieces. So again, people that we've spoken to, things that we have built are a work in progress. So they have addressed some of the needs that we have had conversations about, but there are plenty of other needs that I'm sure many of you have on the phone around the lateral process, whether that's from a recruiting perspective or whether that's, hey, you know what, when lateral attorneys come on board and they've got 500 boxes and 15 clients and 30 matters that we need to get them up and running, I am more focused on that issue than I am about whether or not our overall recruiting strategy filters into our plan for firm growth. So really what we talked about today was just focused on one, maybe not a small piece, but one piece of the overall recruiting process and overall lateral analytics process. So some of the things that we talked about were applications and monitoring that whole process, being able to drill down into those things and focus on an office. Hey, how are we doing with recruiting in that particular office? And how do we measure revenue in various ways in terms of projected versus actual? We saw some pieces of demographic data, specifically just veteran status. But again, if there are some of the conversations that we've been having around, you know what, diversity and inclusion is a big topic, and firms want to become more diverse, and they have specific goals that they want to do for that. And hey, their clients are already asking us, hey, you need to meet these particular diversity goals as part of our ongoing relationship with your firm. How do you manage those, and how does those requirements that clients are putting on you filter into your recruiting process and the goals and the constraints around what your overall composition of partners and staff at your firm looks like? So again, lots of changes in 2020, more changes I'm sure to come in 2021. How do you make data-driven decisions to be able to be agile and nimble and respond to changes in what your clients are asking you to do, where you want to take the firm from a strategic perspective, and even how do you make more tactical and operational decisions based on the data that you have, particularly in this case around laterals and the whole process of evaluating, bringing folks on board, and then monitoring and measuring the impact that they have on the firm. So some other things that we didn't talk about that maybe are in your wheelhouse that you have solutions for or are looking for solutions for. But these are some of the things that we've had some conversations about when it comes to laterals. That onboarding process, non-trivial in terms of being able to work it all out. Somebody comes with one box of files and one matter. Okay, yeah, maybe that's a fairly straightforward process or problem to solve. But what happens if there are complex matters and conflicts that need to be accounted for? How does all of that process work out? How do we make it happen as fast as possible so that somebody who's coming on to the firm can hit the ground running as quickly as possible? So there are solutions out there. We have a couple with some of the partners that we have, always looking to expand what those solutions look like in terms of tracking compliance and timeliness for onboarding tasks, whether that's how do we get all the records on board, how do we do transfer of electronic and paper documents, how do we get all the matters set up as quickly as possible? What does that process look like? How do we get through our standard process to setting up clients and matters for someone who's bringing a whole bunch at one time? What does that look like? How do we track it? How do we understand it and measure it so that we can improve it? Then the flip side of that coin, really didn't talk about departing folks from the firm, but obviously that's a whole nother process and part and parcel of doing work in the legal business. So how do we track compliance on that side and or timeliness? So there are review processes. What does it look like as a person or group is departing from the firm? How do we manage that whole process? How do we get visibility into it so that we can see if there are bottlenecks or, hey, is there risk somewhere in there that we need to address in terms of how we are doing that process or how long it's taking, or, hey, you know, we have specific OCGs that we need to take into account as part of this process. How do we manage all of that in the offboarding process? And some of the work we've done with FileTrail and other vendors takes a deep dive into that problem and has some solutions there from both an operational perspective as well as an analytical perspective to not only manage the process, but also to be able to measure it, see where the bottlenecks are, see where the risk may lie, and address those things using in a data-driven way. Then other conversations that we're having around monitoring impact. What does it look like from a firm perspective in terms of assimilation? If we are the Borg as a firm, how successful are we at taking Captain Picard and making him a part of our culture, incorporating the clients and the type of work that he does? And what are the trends there? So how can we take a look over the last 5 years or 10 years? What has been successful? What has not been successful? How do we maximize those things that are making us successful in our lateral process versus minimizing those things that have led to failures or challenges to the firm or to individuals or groups as they come on board into our firm as part of the lateral process? And then obviously diversity is a big topic for everyone, has been focused on recently, will continue to be a focus. How do we address those challenges, requirements, goals that we have as a firm in a way that can be sort of systematic so that we can measure it again and improve it, and goals that we set sort of filter down through all of the processes that we've been talking about, both from a recruiting perspective as well as sort of the operational work that goes into making sure that somebody comes onto the firm and is assimilated in a way that makes them as quickly as possible a member, part and parcel partner of the firm. And most of what we talked about today was focused at, partner, a lot of the lateral process, when it comes to recruiting and onboarding and measuring is how much money is coming on with that person. Is that person the rainmaker? But it could also get into, I'm sure everyone would see the potential here for analytic solutions around your entire recruiting process, from students coming out of law school. Hey, what law schools translate for our particular firm or this particular area of law into associates or young professionals that get up to speed more quickly than other schools? Hey, those Drexel Dragon candidates are really good. If you haven't figured out, that's my alma mater. They're great. They come on board. They're up and running the fastest of anybody that we've ever seen. How does that, is that true for the Philadelphia area? Is it true for Los Angeles? Is it true for Boston? What does that look like? And how do we take that information that we have about our recruiting processes up and down throughout the organization? And again, maximize the positives, minimize the challenges or places that maybe we aren't as successful. And how does that feed back into our overall strategy? And how can we have sort of the continuous improvement that being able to measure and visualize these processes and successes and failures into our overall strategy? So how do we keep those feedback loops running by having visibility into those areas? All right, I spoke extraordinarily quickly today. So we are at about 12:45. Would love to continue the conversation either now, if you have specific challenges you want to throw into the chat, and I can maybe talk about some of the things that we've talked about on those topics with other clients, or things that we have in the hopper in terms of things that we're working on. If anyone has any questions, feel free to shoot them out there. While we're waiting on that, there are a couple of handouts that we put into the webinar today. If you do want to have a conversation about something that you saw today, please feel free to reach out. Happy to have a conversation around it. If there are things that you have been thinking about from an analytics perspective, I love to geek out on data. Ask anyone here at InOutsource about things that I talk about on a regular basis, lots to do with data and or kids and dogs, but mostly data. Be happy to have a conversation. Hey, this is what we were thinking. What would your solution be for that? Or hey, here's what we did. Look how cool this is. Always happy to see cool stuff as well. Feel free to reach out. You have our contact information. We'll follow up after the webinar. Again, we have an attachment that you could download as part of the webinar today. Take a look at that. Feel free to get in touch. You know what? Let me throw that out there. We did have a poll set up and I totally skipped right through it. So maybe that's why we're a little bit ahead of time. Let me throw a poll out there for everybody. So if you're still on, does your firm track new lateral? And I can't read that. All right, we got some participation in the poll as well. Awesome. And just on that topic, so you saw some things today that was built in Qlik. There are other tools out there, whether it's Power BI, Tableau, et cetera. If you are looking to track that information and you don't have the tools to put together a dashboard like you saw today, hey, we're running it all with spreadsheets. Or hey, we have an awesome solution that kills what you guys put up on screen. Again, be happy to talk about how you get from where you are today to a place where you can make those data-driven decisions. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll. So it looks like A little less than half of folks that responded are tracking actuals versus projected from a revenue perspective. So that's great. I think, again, some of the things that we've talked with folks about are, yes, that is sort of the minimum bar that we'd like to track in terms of our success of our laterals and the incoming partners and incoming staff that are bringing bringing revenue matters clients with them, also information with them. But what are the next steps, right? So what are the diversity goals that we need to meet? What are the staff impact? Hey, they brought revenue, but hey, maybe the revenue wasn't there for whatever reason. A pandemic hit, changed a lot of things that we were doing. But that person sort of offset that with pro bono work that they were doing, or staff development work that they did, or other things, other ways that they are contributing and having a positive impact on the firm. How do we mash those things up so that we're not just looking at a vacuum or focusing on one particular measure, revenue, and ignoring some of those other pieces that are maybe as critical or more critical to our firm growth and the goals that we have as a firm. All right, there was one question that did come through on the chat. Question was, if you have a lateral process in place already, how quickly can you get us up and running with an application? So if you've got this information that is you are tracking in some fashion, whether that's spreadsheets or a system, or you're using Intapp, whatever it happens to be, it's a fairly quick turnaround for the things that you saw today. The tools that we use are very good at connecting to data sources. So you're probably looking at maybe 2 to 3 weeks to get you from where you are today to having an analytics solution like the one that you saw today. I won't say that with a big question mark on screen. I'll show you the Linux solution. So to go from, hey, we've got a bunch of spreadsheets to this, typically a very quick turnaround, a couple of weeks, understanding the data that you have, how it's stored, get it connected to an analytics tool like you see on screen, and then start working on the fine details of what the visuals are. Hey, this is how we think about our lateral process, and this is how we want to evaluate our overall process as well as individual candidates as part of our process. And again, if it's one of those other areas of the whole onboarding, offboarding process or monitoring impact, some things that you don't see on board here, again, these tools are very flexible and have a plethora of visuals that can be used to monitor a business process and how long it's taking to get through each particular gate and to each particular milestone within that process. Or is it we want to focus on total volumes of work that we're doing from our onboarding and offboarding processes? What does that look like? How do we visualize that? How do we work through our process? How do we continue to improve it? All right, I don't see any other questions today. So I think we're going to go ahead and end about 5 minutes early today. I want to thank everybody again for taking the time to jump in on our webinar, talk a little bit about data everywhere, and specifically around lateral analytics and all of the components that go into building out a vision and going through all the operational pieces of recruiting and bringing folks on board or separating folks from the firm. Hope everybody learned a little something today. And again, I want to encourage everybody to take a look at the information that we have available. If you want to have a conversation about some things that you're thinking about doing or you have done, or hear a little bit more about some of the things that we've done and how we might be able to partner going forward, please feel free to reach out. So thanks again, everybody. Hope everybody has a great weekend. And thanks again to ILTA for hosting us today. And that's it for today's webinar. Thank you very much.